Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first Activity Strong Executive Edition webinar of the new year. My name is Megan McMahon, and I am the Director of Strategic Development here at Link Senior. For today's webinar event, we will be providing you with one free NAB, NCAP, NCCDP, NCTRC, and NZ-SRDT CEU credit. And to be eligible for those CEUs, you do need to remain on this webinar for the full hour today. At the end of the webinar, I will provide the required post-webinar CEU survey evaluation link in the webinar room chat box. And I'll also post that link by email this afternoon, so please be sure to check your spam folder in case it lands there. The CEU survey must be completed by midnight Eastern Time this Thursday. If you have any questions at all, please be sure to email us at webinars@linksenior.com. And please note that your certificates will be issued by email before the end of the day on Friday, January 6th. I'll now hand it over to Charles D. Vilmorin, CEO and co-founder of Link Senior. Charles?
Thank you so much, Megan, and welcome everyone. Welcome to this new year. Welcome to this Activity Strong webinar. I was thinking this morning about this presentation, of course, and I realized how excited I was to spend the first working day, I guess, of 2023 with you all. As you noticed from the registration page and our slide today, we were supposed to be joined with Alicia Fenstermacher, Vice President of Purposeful Living with Presbyterian Senior Living. But unfortunately, she has a bout of COVID, like apparently a lot of us have right now. So unfortunately, she doesn't have voice and wouldn't be able to join us. But I'll be filling in for her sections. And I guess we can get started. Again, this is an Activity Strong Executive Edition. Activity Strong is this amazing platform that Link Senior launched in partnership with three really good and amazing organizations, namely Activity Connection, NAP, and NCAP. And as I've been doing now, I think for the fourth year, I think, this is our first webinar of the year, and we dub these like the state of resident engagement. And obviously we're in 2023. And the hope here is really to share with you some perspective on the past year in 2022, but also share with you things about where we think resident engagement is and how to progress and improve from there. If you are new to Activity Strong, again, welcome. My name is Charles de Vilmorin, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Link Senior. I started Link Senior 15 years ago. I love my work. It's an honor to be working with so many activity professionals throughout the US and Canada and touching some of the lives of actually professionals and residents throughout the world, because we do have a worldwide presence. The company that I co-founded, we have very strong values and we're proud of these. So a couple of things about it. One is 6 years ago, we launched a big platform called Old People Are Cool for a lot of different reasons, but one of them being that we're not a fan of segregation based on age. We think that everybody is cool. We even have a website called oldpeopleare.cool. And if you go there, there's different types of swag. You can buy t-shirts and stickers and so on. And we give the proceeds to the Alzheimer's Association. And when COVID happened in 2020, we sat down with the team and we were trying to figure out how we could help and support the industry. And this is how we came up with Activity Strong, which is now a huge platform, like some of you might be aware, to mostly really and simply acknowledge the amazing work of activity and life enrichment professionals, but also try to educate and empower them. So with that, I want to pause and really stop and thank you all for the amazing job that you do every day. I think that we're still going through many challenges, and some of them I will be explaining in my presentation today. But I know that some of you did show up and continue to show up at work in extremely difficult situations. And just so you know, we at Link Senior and our partner are extremely grateful and proud of to be able to work with professionals like you. We believe that you are essential. I think that you're more than essential. I think that in many cases, you are the spine of the industry. So with that being said, a little bit more about Link Senior before I get into today's slides. Again, we work with many organizations throughout the US and Canada. We're very honored to be touching the lives now of 50,000 residents, and we have a 98% renewal rate. We work mostly with assisted living, memory care, and skilled like nursing homes operators. And essentially what we do is resident engagement. That's what we do, and we do it pretty well. Don't get me wrong, our technology works very well, but we also offer a lot of education. And in the end, as some of you might know, it's all about human touch, right? This is a people's industry. It's people supporting people. I like to say that it's humans helping other humans being humans, essentially. And so we have different tools. If you're interested in reaching out, please do so. But just know that we love resident engagement. We do it well, and we would be happy to talk with any one of you. Part of our work, well, most of our work, all of our work actually we're proud of, but I would share the fact that we are also evidence-based. So we did a clinical study that was published in a peer-reviewed journal in 2019. And as you can see, really good outcomes that most of the industry should be thinking about improving, and so on and so forth. So into our presentation today. So the way we're going to do this is I'm going to do like a quick introduction. It might sound a little bit repetitive for some of you that have been on our webinars before, but this is going to be short, and it's a kind of a good way to kind of reset and see, understand where we stand. And then on our section 1 and 2 and 3, we're going to go into exclusive data and insights from Link Senior. So I'm very excited to be presenting that to you, because just so you know, this is the first time we're presenting this. It's exclusive. I don't know of any other company out there that has this type of data. So hopefully it's going to be helpful for you. Just so you know, we will be sharing the slides as part of this follow-up, so you'll be able to have access to the slides. Now, section number 4 was a section that Alicia Fenstermacher was supposed to be doing with me. So that's the piece where I'll try to do as best as I can do in terms of a job to represent her work. But the idea of section number 4 is to help you kind of take some of the insights that we'll be sharing today and help you implement them, hopefully tomorrow or this week or next week. So with that being said, the one thing I want to share with you all before I get started is that, as you know, our chat becomes super active, which is a great thing. We love this sense of community. 2 things about this. 1, feel free to ask me any question about anything on what we'll be sharing with you today. If you want something really specific in terms of question, please direct it more in the Q&A section. And then the last thing is, if you want to talk with everyone and contribute to the discussion, make sure you select everyone in the drop-down. I still see some people here using just hosts and panelists. So with that being said, let me dive in. So when I speak about resident engagement, I like to kind of start from the beginning, which is basically what it is and why it's important. And as you probably guessed from my level of passion when I speak and what I said before, resident engagement is essential. It is essential. And the work that you do every day when you show up at work is, as I said, you are helping humans being humans. And there's this idea that the purpose of meaning and purpose is a basic human right. So your function, especially in supportive living, is empowering people to have access to this basic human right. If you were to define a little about engagement, define a little bit resident engagement, I love this one definition. It's pretty simple, but basically it explains that it's about collaborating. So your residents, the people under your care, find purpose every day, right? And when you think about this definition, there are two things important here. The first and the last word. Obviously, the word purpose, that's the goal. But the first one, I would argue, is super important as well, is that we are collaborating. Many of you, and I hope all of you, would agree to the fact that even at the very late stage of life, there is an opportunity for us to engage with our elders. We know that even if you're at the late stage of a dementia journey, if you're non-verbal, there are still ways to interact with these residents. And so I think in activities and life enrichment, we know that, but sometimes people outside of our department don't really know that there's these opportunities. So resident engagement is really about collaborating. And now, when you think about how we've been doing this as an industry, one would argue that it's been difficult, right? This is something that I learned when I certified myself as an activity professional a number of years now, is just the fact that our industry, for a lot of different reasons, have not respected and dignified activity and life enrichment professionals. And so this is why often you see very slow, very, very low staffing levels. And as we all know, most of our residents, if not all of our residents, need our support on a weekly basis, sometimes on a daily basis, to have access to purpose and meaning. And if you look at data, this is obviously validated, right? There was a CDC report that was published in a number of years ago now, but we couldn't see anything else since. And a lot of the data that we'll be sharing in a few slides are about these data points. But if you think of the fact that in skilled nursing facilities like nursing homes, we are only providing 11 minutes of engagement a day and 20 minutes in assisted living. Obviously, this begs three thoughts, which is one, none of us will be happy with so little engagement. The second thing is often we need to also ask ourselves, well, what happens in these minutes, right? There's this old bad joke, I would say, about activities is that this, the old standard was the 3 Bs, bingo and Bible and birthdays. And don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of all of them. I joke often saying that the birthday song is my favorite song. It's actually the only song I can really sing. But we know that that is not representative of the preferences of our residents. So number 2 is, we talk about quantity, we talk about quality. Number 3 is also the fact, and I can tell you, because we speak to many, many professionals, many, many different organizations throughout the years, we're still shocked by the fact that some providers out there have actually never thought about measuring. I love to ask people, do you have an idea of the percentage of residents that are engaged? Do you know how much engagement is provided? And often, it's been improving a lot, but often people look at you and they don't really know, which is an issue because, we know that activities is essential. And so therefore, we need to be able to think about optimizing and improving. And you can't really manage something if you don't know what you're doing. So the point being here that we need to get out of this, right? So some of the slides in section 2 and 3 are about how do we get out of this plateau? How do we improve? How do we take the lessons learned? So this really was the piece that I was really excited to get to, which is, again, exclusive insights. It says number 2, it's a mistake. It's the first section of my presentation today. And before I share some of the data, let me just discuss it a little, give you a little bit of background. One is this data that we're sharing is part of a larger white paper asset, a benchmark tool that we're providing to our clients in an exclusive way for the next 30 days. So please stay tuned or contact us if you need more insights or if you have any questions. But that's one aspect. The second aspect is point number 2 here is the data that we accumulated and analyzed for you today is part of a larger set of data and research and surveys that we did with some of our clients and through different surveys throughout the second half of 2022. And the third aspect here is that this data is only for supportive living. So just be mindful of the fact that this does not include things like independent living or adult day. It's centered mostly on assisted living, memory care, and the nursing home environment. And if some of you aren't aware, when we talk about quote unquote AL, this is for assisted living, MC is for memory care. I agree, Jennifer Ricker, I think we shouldn't talk about memory care, but memory support, but we take the acronym. I agree with you, let me put it this way. And then skilled nursing facility is the nursing home environment, SNF. So again, remember the 11 and 20 minutes. We analyze a lot of data, and this is one of the very first things that I was excited to share with you is we're very happy with the trends that we're seeing. This on the right-hand side show the trends that we're seeing across a significantly large portion of our clients. And this is the amount of minutes of engagement provided by resident by day. So as you can see, our clients tend to fare very well compared to the bulk of the industry, where they are almost engaging. So that's the average of the whole year of 2022, but almost 26 minutes per day per resident. And actually, there was an increase of almost 20%. So from January to December, there was an increase of 19%, which is pretty significant. And so ended the year, I think, almost at 28 minutes. And one of the other findings that we thought was pretty interesting was the fact that nursing home operators tend to provide more engagement per day per resident than assisted living, and assisted living more than memory care or memory support. So I was a little kind of, shocked the first time I saw this. It was a couple of years ago when we first realized that. And I think it's to be expected. Skilled nursing homes, depending on the type of providers, do offer more kind of structured activities because they tend to track more activity. They tend to track more attendance. The big shocker for me was the fact that memory care was the lowest. But it's also explainable, I think that's a word, simply because we know in dementia care that a lot of our residents, when you are at a certain stage of a dementia journey, you can't withstand a whole hour of a program. There's this tool called the geriatric deterioration scale. And if you hit a certain number, basically it's shown that you can't be in an activity of more than 11 minutes. So that's extendable, but I thought it was interesting. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, but when we present that to operators, they find that very interesting. So that's insight number one. Insight number two that we thought was really interesting is the amount of contacts per day. So in other words, how many times are we so when we say contact, is a activity professional or anyone else on the team engaging or offering engagement with a resident, right? So again, a contact could be, I walk to a resident called Holly and I say, hey, would you like to join us for this program? Regardless of what Holly say, yes, I want to come, or no, I don't want to come, or if Holly is sleeping, that's a contact. And we obviously want to think that the more the contact, the better, right? And so again, the trend, like the previous one, is going up. So the average contact per resident was 0.64 throughout the year of 2022. But obviously, we were very pleased to see an improvement of 33%. And obviously, we want that number to be higher, right? I think that the main limitation, and you'll see that in the second section, the main limitation is staffing. And then, not really surprising, based on the first slide, skilled operator rank higher, actually slightly higher than assisted living, which also rank higher than memory care. The third insight that we were excited to share with you also is the total volume of engagement, i.e. the number of, the amount of time deployed per day, right? And that's also important because it talks about the capacity, right? If I have one team member, it's not the same thing as 3 team members, right? Technically, with 3 team members, I could be deploying 3 times more engagement. And again, the trend is up. That's good. It's not as going up as much as before, sorry, some of the few slides before. And the main reason for that is we've noticed that the second half of the year, there were more and more declines, right? So refusal of program, which we believe is a good thing, right? We think that zero, when residents don't refuse program, it's a bad thing. And we saw that with the different waves of the pandemic, when we had almost nothing going on, residents were not refusing programming because they were just taking any kind of social interaction they could. So again, going up, that's good. 8% up is good. Not as fast growing as the others, but explained mostly because there's a higher decline rate. Now, the thing that we were also measuring, and we continue to actively measure that because we think it's important, is the length of the contact. So when we are engaging residents, again, none of this is entertainment, right? All of this is active engagement. We don't recommend tracking things like people sitting down in front of TV or anything that's passive, really, really passive. So here, engagement here in terms of contact is the length, right? So contact length. And so what was interesting, we thought, was that it's longer in assisted living than skilled, than memory care. And there's a lot of different reasons for that we found by interviewing people. One of them is just maybe the acuity. So, just the fact that people, just the fact that some people, when they are further down a road of a physical cognitive journey, can be in longer type of programming opportunities. But the other thing that we thought was interesting here is that skilled operators, or anyone actually, sorry, not only skilled, but programming managers, activity directors that track attendance are also very good at managing their time because they know who's been engaged, they know who hasn't. And that allows them to be much more strategic with that time and so on and so forth. So again, we thought that was really, really interesting to see. And then one thing that we did not include here was the decline rate, just because I just had so much insights I wanted to share with you. But just know that we tend to recommend that a decline percentage should not be lower than 10% on an ongoing basis. Again, we think that if a resident is telling you, no, I don't want to come to this activity, he or she feels they have choice. Now, as a professional, we should always take the feedback and say, okay, well, how can I improve, right? So sometimes refusal rate can speak about maybe the quality needs to be improved, but generally speaking, it's healthy, it's okay to have a refusal rate of 10%. We definitely don't want to see it less than 5%. So 10% is a good goal. And so we have some clients where, believe it or not, it's up to 20% and sometimes more. And again, this is not bad. As long as you're addressing the quality, it's not bad. So now we're standing now in 2023, January 3rd. The question is, we all know that what's being produced, even with some of the best operators, best companies out there, we probably want more, right? Everybody would agree to that. But there are deep limitation factors today. Some of them we can manage, some of them we can't. And we wanted to share with you what we are seeing right now. So if this matches what you're seeing, then we can talk about, what are the potential solutions for this. So for the challenges, our research shows that probably the biggest detractor, the biggest challenge from us to delivering the promise of person-centered engagement to our residents is really staffing and enabling interdisciplinary work, right? So the reason why these go hand in hand is the fact that, and we have recommendations for this, but we all know that we should have more time in our day, right? When I speak to activity professionals, the number one thing they want is more time, more time, more time. Obviously, they want more budget, but if you ask why more budget, they want to be more efficient, they want more team members and so on. But we could all fix a lot of problems if I had the magical power of multiplying all of you by 3, right? The quality of life of your residents would significantly go up within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, not much more than that, if we can just multiply the available time. So if you think about that, and if you think about the fact that one way of getting out of this is also getting help from other departments, then we need to look at staffing and interdisciplinary work together. And, it kind of saddens me to see that, obviously this has improved with COVID, right? I remember when we were doing the first versions of the survey back in 2019, I think, I think the yes here, are you consistently getting help from other departments? This was sitting, I think, below 30%, I forget, but it was kind of in that range. So I think that one of the good things of this pandemic, of the kind of the silver lining, is that we've all learned to get help. But I think we should be much higher than that. I think it's, I'll be blunt, I think it's unacceptable that you or activity directors are not getting help from other departments. Even this morning, I spoke to an activity director. It was herself for like 78 residents. And I'm like, you're set for failure, right? Like your job description, you just cannot accomplish it because you can't, right? And so number one is really to activate this. It's a culture thing. And so I speak to some professionals, sometimes they're kind of distressed or depressed because they can't get that done. And I think that all of you just know this is a cultural thing. It's a leadership thing. You can definitely advocate for it, but it needs to come. Often it's easier if it comes from the top, from your ED, from your administrator, and so on and so on. And we have tools, and part of my slides in section number 2 is to share with you maybe how we can discuss it. But that's really, really important. The second aspect here is, I think, also crucial, which is activities is essential, right? Family members, when they come and visit a building, a community, they've learned through COVID how much social isolation can kill, really. And so, it would behoove our marketing and sales department to partner with us and see, how can we collaborate? And again, this has really improved, don't get me wrong, but I think there's a lot of opportunities for us all to think about the fact that, 21%, again, it's not bad, right? 21% of us talk to our sales and marketing department daily, but more than half, it's monthly or almost never, right? And this kind of saddens me because, again, we do great things in activities, but I always say, like, the one thing that we should try to improve also is getting credit for the work we do. And when we do that, one good way of getting credit is to partner with marketing and sales. And then the third aspect here, and just, I am deeply passionate about the field of dementia care. I think this is good, right? This is pretty good that we get help from clinical and care department to manage behavior expressions. And obviously the clinical side of things is really incentivized to do this because, behavior expressions, they come up because of 2 things, really simple. It's either pain or it's boredom, right? And so pain, activities can help, but sometimes, we can partner with clinical and so on. Boredom is what activities is about, right? Boredom is something that activities is meant to, quote unquote, fix and address. And, the fact that 25%, a quarter of us, we don't get help from clinical to manage behavior expression. I think that's an opportunity, but again, there's been a lot of improvement there. And I think it's pretty good to see that 2/3 of us actually do that. So again, staffing and interdisciplinary work is super important. And I have a follow-up slide on that with more insights. which is that, we were asking this question. This was in September, so not too long ago. And, we're going to be asking that question soon again to see where that's been. I know there's a lot of challenges. There's the economy not getting on well, there's staffing challenges, there's still a bit of COVID. So it kind of saddens me to see that a third of our teams have seen a decrease, right? I find it, well, I was going to say amusing. It's not amusing. It's kind of shocking to see that many operators out there still don't see activity teams with a lot of return on investment, right? So again, part of my second and third section here, I'll try to share some insight on how we can turn that around. But mostly half of us, kind of the team level numbers have stayed the same. And again, about a third, or a little less than a third, have decreased. So that's not cool. I know there's a lot of staffing challenges. There's a lot of turnover. So sometimes the question, the issue here is not that people like the team were diminished as a decision, but maybe there's just open positions. But again, we want these numbers to improve. And then last but not least, really this is important, and it goes back to the thing I was saying about marketing and sales partnership, which is how frequently do you discuss resident and family satisfaction with your administrator or executive director? I like to say that families, again, I think I've said that on the previous slide, families and residents, they want two things, right? They want safety and they want engagement. And it's something that we need to learn, is how can we empower activities to really be able to be used as a satisfaction tool. It's unfortunate that Alicia couldn't join us, because when she started implementing Link Senior, one of the first things that they were doing was to measure satisfaction, and they saw a 5% increase. So, forget the fact that it was Link Senior, it kind of really shows the fact that if you invest in life enrichment, if you do it strategically, and if you measure it, you can have huge improvement in terms of resident and family satisfaction. The second bucket of challenge that we wanted to share with you is different, is just the fact that a lot of us don't have tools. So, we again, I have this little soapbox here, which is, and some of you joke, with me that I talk about it all the time. I'm a strong proponent of tracking attendance. Some of you would say, oh, and I am in assisted living, I don't need to do it, it's not a regulation. Honestly, please, if there's one thing that you want to, that I would encourage you to think about, is if you track attendance, you can measure what you do and you have data to then improve. Especially with the pandemic, but it was actually happening before. We see operators that are tracking attendance in, obviously, memory care. I would argue memory care, we have to do it. In assisted living, we also have to do it. But we even see people now doing it sometimes in independent living. So that's one thing. And, it's still shocking to see that more than half of people interviewed are not tracking attendance, or they're using paper, right? Paper, don't get me wrong, it's good to have a process, but paper will never give insights or intelligence or make it actionable. And I think this is a little bit reflected also when we ask professionals, do you have tools and staff to engage all of your residents with purpose? So this was a survey we did in August. I love to see the fact that it's 2/3 yes. That shows a high degree of confidence. But again, like we should be at 100%, because 34% of people saying no basically are indirectly saying that they don't have the tools to be successful, right? And that's important. Like if you sign up for a job, you have, like in your job description, you have tasks. You need to have tools to be able to do this. And then the third one is, like what kind of technology? So again, not really plug for Link Senior. Please consider any type of technologies, but there's a lot of technology out there, beyond nothing. When I speak to a professional and I ask them, well, what do you use to engage residents? Like this person I spoke to this morning didn't have anything. I mean, how can you do your job if you only have Google or paper? There's no way you're going to be able to engage, in her case, 78 residents. So with that being said, that's critical, like tools to be able to deliver on the promise on the website of the company, like promise of person-centered engagement, and also on the job description of an activity professional. And then the third aspect is, and that's something really important, I'm about to get a little bit, well, not super, but one tad technical. For some of you that are a rec therapists on the line, you'll probably be familiar with this, but activities, there's a process, right? And this is what I learned when I became an activity director, which is, it's called API. Alyssa, so I haven't been checking the chat because it's super busy, but Alyssa recognizes API. And yes, this is API, right? This is a process, it's evidence-based. It's not rocket science, it simply works, which is activities and resident engagement and rec therapy is about 4 things: getting to know the residents, 1, 2, planning, right? So we know who the residents are, we're making a plan. 3, engaging them, right? That's pretty important. And 4, evaluating. So in the word evaluating, this is where we're tracking attendance and all of that jazz. But the point is that this is a simple process. We like to think of the fact that when you enable that, you can really deliver on this idea of purpose, and you can do it for all of your residents all the time. And I like to think sometimes of the fact of these words of quote unquote prescribing engagement, right? It's not to say that the clinical side of things is not important. It is essential, don't get me wrong, but there is so much opportunity in elevating engagement at the same level to really partner, right? And this is why the word prescribing is so important. We can think about, like, for example, music therapy before considering any kind of antipsychotics, right? We know that we should do this. I know that sometimes some of the electronic health record, like PCC, when you're about to administer an antipsychotics, it asks you, did you consider music therapy and all of that? So people know, but the problem is operationalizing this, right? So we did a huge survey research a couple of years ago, and the findings were pretty interesting, which is we were asking, and sorry, I didn't put the sample size. I think it was more than 220 organizations. We simply asked, which of these steps do you consistently do, right? And sorry, the birds you're hearing, I got birds for my birthday and I still haven't moved them. I should have moved them. But anyway, if they do, I'll move them again. So we were asking organizations, which steps do you do consistently? So the good news is that we tend to assess our residents consistently. One would argue this is out of 1, right? So 0 is 0%, 1 is 1%. So here you can see that 2/3 of the time we're correctly assessing our residents. Obviously we want to be at 100%, but there's different reasons why that's hard. Planning is also on par, that's good. I think where things, quote unquote, start to show opportunities is the implementation of the plan, right? Like only 50% of the time do we implement the plan program. And a lot of the time when we ask, the main reason for this is purely staffing. And then the 4th one, which again, this is what I've done my little soapbox here, is evaluation. I think this is critical, is to think about how can we evaluate our work? How can we just measure and get credit for the good things that we do? And then last but not least, we, because of our industry and because of the quote unquote needs of our residents, it's also important to correlate this with outcomes, like clinical outcomes. And my experience shows that most of very well-educated professionals like a CTRS will tend to try to relate activity outcomes with clinical outcomes. And so 28% of people do. And if you just give me 1 second, I'm going to move my bird. I'm sorry for this. Just give me 1 second. I'm so sorry about that. Thank you very much. So typically when we work with organizations, I like to ask that question often. Very often, a CTRS or somebody who's trained to do this will know how to. But I think it's really important to kind of match and correlate that with clinical outcomes. So that's a lot of the data can help you do that. There's a lot of saying that that's kind of the future of engagement, is to show on an ongoing basis the quality of life improvements and so on. And it's not hard. It's just that you one, need to know the process, and two, have the tools to do this. So that's that. So again, when we think about challenges, the first piece was the staffing. The second one was really the tools we have. And then the third one is sometimes just purely education to understand the process, again, API, and how to implement that. So I hope thus far this has been interesting for all of you. Again, we started with the state of res engagement, then we discussed a little bit the challenges. Let me share with you all now the way to get out of this plateau, right? So the reason I like to speak of a plateau is, often when we start at something, we improve, right? So there's this curve where we improve, and then sometimes we sit at a plateau for a long time because we don't know how to continue to improve per se. And so I'm going to assume that all of you have started to embark in some kind of journey of improving, and some of you might be sitting there and thinking, well, how do I get to the next level, right? So again, this section here is really about helping you, based on our findings, to understand what's next and how do we improve. So the first one is really addressing the staffing. So again, this we did a lot of research based on a goal of about 35 minutes of resident engagement, and I'll discuss that in a couple of slides. But if you were to be able to engage residents the way they need it, these are the different staffing ratio that you should consider as goals. And again, this is based on kind of a peer research review that we did. It's research based on the data that we see, but also what we see with organizations that are very successful at engagement. And so in assisted living, the typical assisted living setting, we should have one team member for 27 residents. It's slightly lower in skilled, so 1 to 23 in skilled, and in memory care, obviously it's even lower, and that's 1 to, let me move my chat box here, it's 1 to 13. And part of the calculation here, this is important, and again, if you have any questions on these, please feel free to reach out to us. One of the ways we came up with these ratios, we also did work on grouping levels. And the idea here is that, in memory care, we can't do very large groups as much as we can in assisted living or skilled. So there was some of that intelligence built in there. We have more one-on-ones in memory care than we have in assisted living as well. So that's something that I'd love you to consider is, it's important to think about what is a goal and how do we get to that. So please, we've shared this. I think this is the second time we shared these ratios. They're listed on our website. Feel free to use that as a way to engage with your organization and talk about staffing levels. to, so I'm reading Kimberly's comment also. There's also this notion that this is one team member, like one FTE. We can also think about a combination of a FTE plus help from other departments, right? So this is total like 8 hours a day type of availability. The second type of recommendation of kind of data point that we thought was important is to measure like what's the impact of technology. And this is one of the data points that I think is the most important is, I would assume that if I go to the website of all of your organization, we speak to the fact that we are going to be delivering person-centered engagement. And if we're not using technology, it's super hard to do it. And the question we were asking ourselves is, how can we prove that? And so we did a couple of years ago a very large research. As you can see here, more than 700 organizations participated. But basically, the data shows it. If you have technology to assist your activity department, you are twice more likely to deliver on person-centered care. This idea of individualized plan. You are 133% more likely to build groups, right? So this is super important. This is how you fight social isolation. But the other aspect is that you're making your teams comfortable with the work they do, right? On the right-hand side here, staff say that they're more likely to report knowing if residents are engaged in programs. And then the last piece here, which I think is really important, is 183% more likely to report they know if programs match resident preferences, right? Remember my comment early on about the 3Bs, right? Again, nothing wrong with the 3Bs, but we want more. And so we want to be able to show that our programs, like what we do every day, matches resident preferences. That's super important. So I hope that some of these things are helpful. One of the things that I alluded to before was this 35 minutes a day. So this is a quote unquote a rule or a goal or a way to think about what's a measurable objective. And again, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. But as you're tracking attendance, if you're tracking engagement and measuring, we have this standard that we like to discuss, which is 85-35. So we should have a goal of engaging our 85% of our residents or more, but 85 is the minimum, and then 35 minutes a day, right, or more, right? So these are important goals. Again, just because of the length of this presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. But these are important. And so, how do you make it happen? So again, I apologize. Well, I and Alicia apologize she couldn't make it today, but we were excited to have her kind of come in and talk about kind of an exercise that she's been doing with her communities about how do we operationalize and improve that. So, Alicia is an amazing professional. She's with an organization based in Pennsylvania that has 15 life plan community called Presbyterian Senior Living. She did want me to say that she is the vice president of Purposeful Living, but she is also a friend, and she is truly a friend. I don't know if she's on the line, but Alicia, you are truly a friend of ours and myself, and it's an honor to be able to work with you. She's a licensed social worker by background, a licensed nursing home administrator, and last year was promoted with the title of Vice President of Purposeful Living because Presbyterian Senior Living understood and invested in that discipline and really recognizing how essential it is. She lives in Pennsylvania with her husband and son, stepson Maverick, and 2 dogs named Freddie Mercury and Baby Lestrange. And she also wanted me to share that she's passionate about the importance of relationships and individual empowerment. And she is all about embracing our own unique us. And I can tell you, I can actually witness and tell you that she does believe in that because I've seen her interact with some of her team members, and she is all about empowering the people doing the work in the communities, the life enrichment professionals. So the thing that we wanted to share together is kind of how do we take some of these insights understand where we are, and improve. And 2 years ago, with Activity Strong, we released this tool. We didn't invent this thing, just to be clear. But we created a tool called the SWOT analysis for activity professionals, which is based on a process in business called SWOT. And if you don't know or have never heard about it, SWOT is very, very simple. We're going to be sharing with you in the chat and the follow-up emails an easy way you can take this and do it with your team and department and organization. And so SWOT stands for strength, weakness, opportunity, and trend. And when in 2020, the second half of 2020, Alicia started to see a very high level of burnout with her team. And when we released this tool, she was thinking, well, maybe that's a good way for me to sit down with my teams, with an S, right? Because she oversees multiple locations, and to really help them understand from within, what are they good at? Where do they have opportunities? What are their weaknesses and what are the threats? And so if some of you are completely new to the system, just think of the fact that strengths and weaknesses are things that you control, right? You control every day. And then opportunities and threats are things that are beyond your control. But it's important to understand so you can adjust against strengths and weaknesses based on that. And so one of the things that Alicia wanted me to share with you is when she did that with her teams, it was very, very validating. It was a great empowerment tool. She approached it as, hey, look at clinical. They have this process called QAPI, which is about performance improvement. Why don't we do this? And it was a great way for her to just honor the resilience of her teams. She also wanted me to share the fact that, interestingly enough, in activities or her teams had the most trouble finding out where the strengths were. That's where she had to sit down the longest with them and really understand what are the things that we're really, really good at, that we control. And the other thing, of course, that came out of that is that each community was really different, right? All of you are different. All of you have different sets of strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats. So really understanding that is what's going to help you kind of take this, sit down and improve or address what your weakness is, discuss with your organization what the threats, to make sure that you really grab these opportunities, right? That's how it works. So the last thing I wanted to share on behalf of Alicia before we get into a little exercise altogether is the fact that they decided to do it together again, right? So Presbyterian Senior Living, Alicia and her teams are going to be doing it again. And in this instance, what they're going to do is they're going to think about having goals, measurable goals based on that, right? And I think it's pretty cool because, I don't think that activity and life enrichment professionals are meant to be like MBAs or super good at business. But sometimes, we can see things in business that can help us improve. And that's an easy way of doing it. And it's also an easy way to sit down with the rest of our team and discuss and brainstorm, especially at the beginning of the year. So how do we use SWOT? So typically, the recommendation, and this is what Alicia has been doing with her team, is that, typically we want to do this I would advocate like probably an hour, right? But maybe to give you a flavor of it, what we could do is just take a few minutes all together and think of dropping in the chat, what do you think your strengths are? So please, if you don't mind, take a second in the chat here, drop what you think your department is really, really, really good at. It could be anything. It could be my team and myself are really good about being creative. My team is really good at, Alicia Tiger saying, calling bingo. That's good. I love bingo myself. But okay, I'm seeing a lot of entry. That's great. Just in the interest of time, I'm going to move to like weaknesses. Like, what do you think that's the one thing that we can correct ourselves that isn't great, right? So adapting to change, planning, time management. Yeah, time management is a big one. Cool. low staffing. Well, low staffing, just to be clear, is a threat, right? Like you don't control directly that, right? Let's get into that. What are the opportunities? Like a good way to think about opportunities is what is something super cool that could happen if, for example, you have all the budget you wanted, or what are the super cool things that could happen if you had like the staffing you wanted, right? So collaboration is cool, creative and humor. So thank you for sharing all of these. I think that most of you get the idea. And last thing here is, what are the threats? Like if we don't address our weaknesses, what's a threat? Like what's going to happen that could be, not good? Like sometimes it could be, quality of life of residents not being great, lack of teamwork, increased loneliness. Okay, I think that most of you see. Yeah, you get it. Okay, cool. So this was super short. Please, feel free to think about doing this work with you and your teams. A couple of things I wanted to share with you is, if you download the PDF that we just shared with you, what we want to do is celebrate your strengths. And so what we thought at Link Senior to do is, in honor of Activity Professionals Week, which is in 2 weeks, if you send us your SWOT, and there is an email, I think it's swot@activitystrong.com. If you send us your SWOT analysis, we will be more than happy to help you celebrate your strengths on our activity Facebook group and potentially other avenues. So feel free to send them to us. We can take also some of the strength that we had in the chat here. But again, this tool is really for you to kind of take some of the first insight that I shared with you, understand where you are today, and really help you improve, because we obviously all want you to improve. We think it's essential. So with that being said, let me kind of close this presentation today. And again, I know it was a lot. I could have talked the whole afternoon, but I thought that at least this is interesting and important to you. My biggest wish to all of you is respect, right? I think that, I speak to professionals often, respect is something that we all want. And as a industry, I like to say sometimes, may the age be with you. And it's a combination of Yoda's word and what we think we should think about how our industry, our society actually ages. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Before we end, there were a couple announcements that I wanted to make. But if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out on our website. These are my contacts. In terms of Activity Strong, you'll notice, I think on our website, you're probably seeing a lot of events being lined up. So we're definitely doubling down on the quality and the quantity of offering that we're providing you with. This is the SWOT analysis. It will be in the follow-up. I think that it was shared by our wonderful Megan in the chat. The next event that we have is, you see me smile here. You probably recognize Jen Taylor. She came to us 2 years ago. She's an amazing speaker. And we thought it was a pretty cool and important thing in January 2023, at the beginning of the year, to also give you tools to think about self-care. So Jen and our co-speaker, Tara DeLong, are going to be talking about self-care beyond the bubble bath. So really think about us, because we are the most important asset in our department, right? That's important. Like the human person is really, really important. And so how can we help you focus on better and more self-care? The second event, and this is, not only exclusive to people living in Ohio or working in Ohio, but as some of you might be aware, we partner with the Ohio Person-Centered Care Coalition, which is the state affiliate of what used to be the Pioneer Network. But this is a webinar available also for all of you to attend. And then the last event that I wanted to share with you is on February 21st, we are partnering again. Last year was a huge success. It was one of our biggest events of the year with the Validation Training Institute. And that's going to be one of our larger events. So this is going to be a 3-hour event, I think, called the Validation World Congress. And again, all focused on dementia care, and a principle that I personally love. In full disclosure, I am actually on the board of the Validation Training Institute. Some of you might be aware of the work of Naomi Fowle, this idea of validation, the validation method. And yeah, so hopefully some of you or all of you will attend some of these. Again, thank you for the amazing work that you all do. You are essential. And with that, again, wishing you an amazing year. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And it was a pleasure to spend an hour with you today. Thank you so much.